Hi, everybody. Don't walk in front of over here. Oh, that's going to be a struggle for me because I like to surf. But thank you so much for coming. Good afternoon. I know. It's Wednesday instead of Friday, but we're going to get through it. So thank you for signing up for our session. You know, we take what we do really seriously at Lionville Elementary School, and we love to share, and we also love to learn. So we hope you get a lot out of this session. If you have questions at the end, we're more than happy to answer them. But what we're talking about today is real stuff. So this isn't fluff. This isn't just for this presentation. This is what we actually do every single day. We live, eat, and breathe our kids and trying to help our kids. So without further ado, you see our aprons from Amazon, because my husband thought I was actually coming here to cook. I was like, no. But our school team is actually a lot larger than what you see here today. And we have a group of diverse members on our team. So we have classroom teachers, we have specialists, we have school psychologists, we have some of our folks here today, special education teachers, school counselor, literacy specialists. So we try and have a mix of folks that can bring lots of perspectives to what kids need. And also to kind of give us feedback on how interventions and what it looks like in real life in the classroom. And we have a student Blue Crew. We talked about them last year when we leveled up our incentives, but you'll see we have kids also that support our PBIS program, which is pretty amazing. Yeah, speaking of which. Yeah, that's our school mascot. We're the Lions. And she wanted to come, but we didn't let her come. So hopefully the sound will work. No sound? Do we know? Let me see. Okay, now. Okay. Sorry about that.
Hi, my name's Pride, and I'm from Lionville Elementary School. I'm the school mascot that helps the students be safe, respectful, and responsible. Our school is located in Downingtown, Pennsylvania. These are our presenters: Shelda Perry, Alicia Gracie, Jillian Spear, Madison McKenna, and Erica Mencherkowski. Just wait to see what we have cooking up.
We promised her we'd show it, so thank goodness it worked. But the team here today has graciously agreed to come and showcase how hard they work at Lionville Elementary School. So, yeah. So just to give you a little background about our school, in case you're not sure where Downingtown is or where our school is, we're one of 4 Title I schools, and you'll see our demographics there. And the reason why we felt important to show you this is because when we talk about what we're doing in all tiers for academics and behavior, we want you to know it's not because it's easy. It's because it's hard. And we have currently a little over 670 students, just one principal, just one school counselor, and you'll see we have 30 instructional support aides, 18 specialists, we have Encore, 28 classroom teachers, and then we have quite a range of folks that attend Lionville Elementary School. So it's really hard work, but it is doable. And hopefully what we share with you today, you'll be able to take some nuggets back to your school. So, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. McKenna.
So I'll be going through our menu for today's courses. We're going to be starting with an appetizer, which is going to be light and tasteful, 2 little items just to keep it nice. For our main dish, we'll be moving on to talk through our referral process and beyond, and then we'll be topping it off with some sweet dessert. The proof is in the pudding. So we're going to kind of go through our menu with our appetizer. We talk about like our pre-referral. Our main dish is really going through how our referral process looks, and then what steps we take after that. And then the dessert is going to be just some real life examples of students that we've worked with that we have to share with you guys.
Okay, so I am going to start with the appetizer. The first part of our pre-referral process are our Tuesday data meetings. And so those happen every Tuesday with every grade level. And each week, the grade level teachers meet with a different specialist. So these are the specialists that we meet and we cycle through them. So one time we meet with the principal and the learning support teachers. One other time, sometimes it's just the learning support teacher. So like I'm a 5th grade teacher and Jillian's a learning support teacher. So we meet a lot. And then the next time we meet with our specialists for both literacy and math. We also have time to consult with our gifted teacher and our counselor about behavioral concerns or, just social emotional. And then we meet with the ESL teacher as well. And at each of those meetings, what's really important is we can really focus on those specific students with the specialist teachers. And we know we're going to see them continually, like in a cycle. Do you want to, or should I do the next slide first, or should you want to show them the protocol? So we have like a living document to keep track of all of the students that we talk about and have it documented so we know kind of if they've come up already, if anything has worked to improve things with them, or if we're seeing that there's no improvement or progress, like what other interventions can we put into place, or should they be moving on to another step, like where they will have like an actual piece of paper or document to help them succeed. And so you'll see this is our schedule. So it tells you like, it's colored by who you're meeting with. And so you go to where like 5th grade is, and I would go and see like who I was meeting with each week. So I just take this at the beginning of the year and put it in my calendar. And then it's just, I know, who I'm meeting with to focus on who I'm going to be talking about that week. Yeah. And then at the bottom, usually we have it tabbed off by grade level, and so you would say like what day you met and what students you're concerned about, and we a lot of the times talk about like what the challenges are, what is in their way to succeed. So we focus on what do they need to be successful, what strategies have we already done and still are having issues with. And we also talk about their academic and behavioral data. So are there progress monitoring, is it low? Are they doing okay, but they're still struggling in the classroom? Those types of things to see if it's consistent. And then what we do is we talk together as a team and to try to decide what we could do to further help that student. Sometimes it's setting a follow-up meeting with parents. Sometimes it's just checking in with the same specialist in a week or two. And if we meet with the parents, you'll hear about how that goes later. But this is really helpful because when you cycle back to the same person, you can see, if that person has come up in a different area or if they've done better. And it's just a nice accountability piece for us as regular education teachers. Oh, yes. So there is a sample of this. You have a paper, this pink paper. And this is a folder, and it has a bunch of things in there that are blank that you guys can use and duplicate if you would like. Yeah, and there's more up here if you guys need them.
As a learning support teacher, I know a lot of you are looking at this and probably thinking, that's a lot of meetings. But we get this at the very beginning of the year from Mrs. Perry, and that has become Untouchable Tuesday. So I'm never scheduling an IEP meeting on that day. Erica is never scheduling an MTSS intervention meeting on that day. Our specialists know we're going to be meeting on those days. And for us, for coverages, so if you're like myself, I have AM bus duty or anything, we've also scheduled for our encore teachers to take our duties on those days so that we can attend, and there's no barrier in the way for us to meet as a staff on those days. Oh, sorry, specials. Yes, specials, your gym, phys ed, all, yes. Yes, we call them encore, it's fancy, We should say it in a French way.
Yeah, no one can schedule on Tuesdays, so it's like we know no one can have meetings on Tuesdays. And so as a 5th grade teacher, I know how beneficial those are and like how meaningful they are. But we thought maybe you'd want to hear from other teachers too. So we asked them what they had thought about the Tuesday morning meetings. And since we implemented this program of kind of following a schedule to touch base with every single specialist. And these were just some of the things that the teachers had said.
Yes, I'm interactive, so I'm going to pass. Oh, I can't walk over there. Well, I'm going to pass the mic, and if you read one, there's a treat. Who wants to read the first one? All right, Alexis, because I know you saw her coming over here.
Super helpful to have time set aside to collaborate and meet with specialists and team members.
Thank you. Thank you for volunteering. Next one. I'm going to go to people I know. Or not. I don't know you, sir. But Marty.
A valuable way to ensure that student progress socially, emotionally, and behaviorally is discussed with the appropriate specialists regularly, and next steps can be brainstormed to help all students find success.
Thank you, Marty. I'm not just going in the aisle. I know you thought I was. Hi. Heather? Is I say Heather? Helen. Hi, Helen.
Hi. Sorry. A great time to connect with colleagues you don't see every day and express concerns about our students in a way that is efficient and effective.
Do we have more? Okay. I just want to make sure before I call on somebody. Do you mind?
Oh, sure. It's really an eye test. A productive collaboration time with the core leaders in our building. It allows for regular pulse checks on needy students. Having a schedule means we are committed to having frequent conversations with one another about progress, strategies, and next steps.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So that's out of the mouths of our teachers. And we have one more? One more? Hi, will you do it? Thanks. She doesn't have a name tag on, sorry.
So valuable and are crucial in order to meet the needs of every single student in our school.
Heather.
Oh, I did get a Heather. Look at that. That was meant to be. Thank you for volunteering. Sure.
We've always had Tuesday data meetings, like that's always been specific, but I think as a teacher, you are always thinking of just the kids that are on your mind and who you want to help most. And sometimes we'd be meeting with someone who that wasn't, their specialty. So for us, it was helpful because you could silo those students to who was going to be able to help you best. And they're always available. You can always email them and stuff. It's just that's a set in-person time to meet with them.
A chance to meet with team members that we don't see often and discuss what is best for students.
Yes, thank you. So the next piece of our appetizer, it's our second course within our first course. So these are our pre-core team meetings. So essentially what we do is we meet as a core team, which we'll get into after this. But some of the members on our core team, one of our literacy specialists usually, myself, Mrs. Perry, and then our school psychologist, we essentially go through the data sheet together. So we take a look at each of those tabs on the Tuesday data sheet, and we kind of review what students were talked about, any kind of follow-up items or action items that we may need to go over, and they've been really helpful just having pre-core, because when we get to core, there's obviously just so much to talk about and so many students to talk about. And by going back through that data sheet, there are sometimes little things that we miss where we might say, for example, maybe Alicia brought up someone who had a social emotional concern to Erica, who's the literacy specialist, but then it might say Erica will pass along to Madison. And so we can kind of make sure that we close all of those gaps and make sure that we're communicating all of those things, making sure that any action items or follow-ups are completed. And so we usually try to just meet over our lunch, and we meet before our core meeting that day, and we have our core one time per 6-day cycle. So we run on letter days A through F. We do our core day every E day, so we try to meet for pre-core on E day prior. And it doesn't always happen, just because things happen and we're all busy. So it doesn't always happen, but it is really beneficial when we can meet and just make sure to check off those items, because then when we do have our next meeting and we pull the list back up, we can kind of catch and see hey, that was followed up on, or hey, we did reach out to that parent, or I passed that along to Erica. We make sure all of those things are done. And so we go through that spreadsheet just to make sure we're not missing anything. And I know for me, being the school counselor and meeting with like all of the students and just my own lack of executive functioning, I know for me, it really helps just because I can miss little things a lot. So having that time to go back through and making sure we're really like checking all the boxes and not missing anything, I think is like helpful, but also holds us all accountable.
So 11 years ago, I started at Lionville Elementary School, and core was just going through the log of the school psychologist. Does anybody have that lived experience? And I didn't learn a lot then, and it was kind of a waste of time, I felt, because, okay, thank you, we know they're being evaluated, and thanks, right? So there's a lot more to talk about at core. And so we, over the years, have evolved about what we think we need to get out of it. What kind of conversations are we having? Because they should be action-oriented. They shouldn't just be talking about things because it helps us feel better to talk about things. We're talking about it because we want to make a difference in how students receive their education and whether we need to intervene differently for behavior or academics, and also to be able to support classroom teachers who have the heaviest lift, in our school. So we have a full house for core, and we do it one time per cycle. We do it every E-Day at 2:30. So again, that's another untouchable time. So that means everybody making a commitment to keep their schedules open, and usually the building tries to fall off the rails E-Days at 2:30. But we try and ignore the walkie, and we try and get through it. But it is a challenge sometimes. But we really have devoted that time once per cycle every E-Day to talk about our kids, and we pull up not only that pre-core log just in case we didn't get a chance to meet, but we have a whole core log document where we do look at students that are in the pipeline for evaluation, but we're also looking at students who are have concerns for the nurse, or in the pipeline because they need an intervention plan. Yes, there you go, thank you. And so when we have everybody together, we make sure everybody comes prepared, because you can't just be like, well, I'm worried about Mike, no. You need to be able to have the data. You need to have hopefully been able to be in contact with the teacher. We have documentation to support who we're bringing up. So we ask everybody to come prepared. We have one speaker at a time, because I don't know about your school, but we like to talk. We like to talk over people. We like to whisper when other people are talking. So one person talks at a time, so we can all be focused and people don't have to repeat themselves. And then the goal, obviously, is to have a productive discussion to problem solve with whatever specialists need to actually be an active part of the conversation. And with this, I don't know if you guys contract out, but we contract out for OT, PT, and speech. We also have them come depending upon who needs to be brought up at core, because they need to be an active part of these discussions. And then we have a little note that we fill out for teachers. We don't have the ability to cover classroom teachers every time we have core. So what we do is we make sure we connect with them on the Tuesday data meetings or at other touch points, and we speak on their behalf, bring all concerns forward, strategize, but then we report out to every classroom teacher what our next steps are, what the follow-up plan is. And we keep device uses to a minimum. So whose job is it to fill out the note? So if Erica, our literacy specialist here, is bringing up a student in grade 3, 4, and 5 because a teacher has a concern, or maybe Erica has a concern, then it's Erica's job to fill out the note. If Madison's bringing somebody up because they have social emotional needs and a teacher has connected with her, then it's Madison's job, or school counselor, to fill out the note. If they've been in my office 25 times and I'm crying, out for help, it's my job to fill out the note, or whatever my role is. Whoever it is, they fill out the note and make sure that they communicate with the classroom teacher. And so we have an order. We do have the school site go first. And now who they bring up are kids that are a little bit of an outlier. Let's say we referred a student because we're worried about reading and they're qualifying for math. That's a conversation we definitely need to be having at core. Like, how did we miss that? What happened? What's going on? So we have those conversations. And then we're also mindful of the timeline, because we know sometimes they need an evaluation. Well, if we can look at the core log, we might want to reconsider that and continue to intervene before adding another person to the plate of the school psychologist. And then we have the school counselor goes. We have our literacy specialists and math specialists go. Special ed, gifted, nurse, attendants, and sometimes me. I'm usually last, because whoever I have to talk about is usually brought up by somebody else. It's not usually a surprise, right, if they end up in my office. But we have a really tight process. It's working for kids. I forget the last time we checked our effectiveness rate, but kids that we refer to an evaluation, we were like at 99% that they qualify. So we were doing pretty well. Sure.
So I've been at Lionville just a few years longer than Chelda, and at first, I feel like there wasn't a communication with teachers, like classroom teachers, about who they were talking to, about, or what they came up with as a plan. And I feel it's so nice now knowing, they're taking what our concerns are, bringing them up since we can't be there, and then they're communicating with us what, we all talked about prior, but they've agreed is a good intervention plan for them. So as a teacher, it makes me feel like I'm still part of the process, even though I'm not there.
So moving on to our main course, we're going to be starting by talking about just some of the action items, essentially, after we have those data meetings and those core teams. So for example, we have those academic or social emotional concerns. We would typically start with something that we call an ESAP or a BSAP. So that's an elementary student assistance plan. And then the B is for behavior. So we typically try to start there, just trying to put some interventions in place, for 4 to 6 weeks or so, just to kind of collect data and see what we can try before we move to that second step of looking towards the evaluation or the, going towards an IEP or the positive behavior support plan. So we're going to talk a little bit about each of those pieces.
So I'm one of the literacy specialists, and I work with grades 3 through 5, and then we have another literacy specialist who works with K to 2. So typically on those Tuesday data meetings, we'll hear some of those concerns that are academic driven. The math also kind of, they bring attention to us, and then we have a math specialist that we also share the information with. And then we would create an academic intervention plan, because we don't want to just say, okay, these kids need to be evaluated, right? There's a lot we can do in the classroom before we say this kid needs to be evaluated. So we will ask the teachers, have you looked through all of their records? Have you looked at the progress monitoring data? What area specifically are you concerned about? We don't want them just saying everything, so we created a referral form that the teachers will fill out, or we'll fill it out together at a Tuesday data meeting, and we will then say, okay, looking at this, we believe together as a team that we should do an intervention plan, and we should run this intervention plan with some of these strategies for 6 to 8 weeks, and let's bring the parents in and have a meeting so that we can all kind of get on the same page and say, this is what we're going to do for your child to help them be successful in the regular education setting. And this is just kind of a sheet, and this is in that resource folder, that lets the teacher kind of check their own boxes of, did I kind of, check with their previous teacher? Did I try anything that I want to document that's working or not working? I already tried using a timer and it's not working. So can we try some other strategies? So we use this, and then that helps us create the intervention plan, and we'll show you what they look like. We also use this book called the Prim Manual, and every grade level has one of them. And it's the pre-referral intervention manual. It has lots of just strategies and things you can do in the classroom before, that you can put into a plan before you just jump into the evaluation. Right? Definitely not. Definitely not. It's broken up by the table of contents as area of need. Yeah. So after those Tuesday data meetings, we'll make the parent meeting, and then typically myself or Mrs. O'Keefe, who's our K-2 literacy specialist, she would draft the plan ahead of time, just so we can be efficient in the meeting and kind of let the parents know what are our areas of concern and what are we going to do about it. So here's a sample. Let me make it a little bit bigger. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but there is a sample in the resource folder as well. But you can see the top part is really just think present levels, kind of where is the student and why were they referred. So in this case, we would always write for the concerns of area in the reading of, concerns in the area of reading or math. And then just a little blurb on who the student is. They've always been at Lionville. They, worked with their literacy specialist in K-2, and now they're in 4th grade. Kind of things like that, just to kind of create the picture of who the student is. In this case, the student is an ESL student, so I included their WIDA levels because that again helps us create the picture of the student's areas of strengths and weaknesses. The PSSA scores 3rd through 5th, I always include. Just again, so we have that. Because again, this document, if the student isn't making progress, and we've tried a bunch of different rounds of the intervention, and we do need to go to an evaluation, this document is like golden for our school psychologist, because she uses it and then she knows exactly what we've done and what has been successful and what hasn't been successful. So we use AIMSweb in our school, so this is the AIMSweb benchmark scores, and we also use IXL for math. So we included the students' IXL scores, and then we set goals. And we always set measurable goals. And we put them based off of typically the 6 to 8 week time frame or when the next benchmark is. Because some of our goals are, they're going to move from a tier 2 to a tier 1. So it's pretty specific on their area of need. We're not writing goals for things we can't monitor, and we're not writing goals for areas that they don't have a need in. And then before the next parent meeting, we would fill in this progress side so that the parents, when they came for the second meeting, we would say, here's how they're doing, here's what their progress monitoring was. This was one that we just wrote at the beginning of the year. Then we followed up with strategies of all the things we're going to do for this student that is unique for this student. Things like concrete manipulatives. By the time you get to 4th grade, that's not as common. The student might work in a small group with the teacher, using the manipulatives to help them be successful. Things like additional small group instruction, whether it's with the literacy specialist, whether it's with the math specialist. Things where the student's going to definitely get a study guide. It's like trialing SDIs before they ever even get there or need an IEP. So you're saying like, hey, those things worked, so now we feel like we might need to go to an evaluation. That's something that they might need in order to be successful.
And especially for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, sometimes it's best practice K2, right? That need to still happen for them in 3, 4, 5. So sometimes we're capturing things that K1 and 2 teachers do for all kids that usually fade by the time they start to get a little bit older. So just think about it that way too. Sorry. Go ahead. No, you're okay.
So we break it down depending on the areas of need. If there's no math need, there's no math strategies included. And then reading strategies. It's not moving now. There we go. Because the student is in ESL, we also included some of those ESL strategies, like take away one of the choices, or it can be read out loud to them. So just so that the teacher who gets this, along with any teacher who works with the student, so we do send these plans to all the Encore teachers, so that they know this student has a plan and what they can do to help them. And then one of the sections below is just basically we're painting the picture of how their day is broken down. So tier 1, everyone's getting the same tier 1, but what is this student getting differently? She was getting the 30 minutes of a small group reading with me during MTSS. She's getting 30 minutes with the ESL teacher, and then she's also getting 20 minutes with the math specialist during her day. Every student gets the whole class guidance lessons, so that always goes in there. And then the final part of the intervention plan for the academic part is the OTPT or speech screens that were needed, or does that student have a speech IEP? It's really nice to just have it in there, so then it's like a one-stop shop. Just glance at it and say, oh, this student was already screened for OT and PT, or this student has a speech IEP. We just now know that it's in there. And we meet with the parents and we review this whole plan. And then the last thing we do is we set up a follow-up plan. Or follow-up date of when we're going to meet. Oh, yeah. Yep. So if it's academic, usually the literacy specialist. If it's math, the math specialist. And if it's behavior, the guidance counselor. And we create the plan based off of the needs from that original pre-referral sheet plus our Tuesday data meetings. Like this. So some grade levels have 16 plans-ish, 14 plans. Some grade levels have 6 plans. So it's not for every single kid. It's because there's a lot of best practices happening in our classes, and if the small group is helping that student and they don't need anything more above and beyond the small group that's happening in the classroom, then we don't need to write a plan. But if we are seeing really a trend too where the student goes from
tier 2 to tier 3 and tier 3, tier 3, you know, and the 2 cycles of tier 3, we're going to implement that plan typically because we want to say, hey, we're concerned and we need to give you more. Correct. Yep. Tier 2, tier 3, where there's kind of like flatlining. Yep. It's a way for us to document all the things we're doing, and then we would be able to have this for the school psychologist when we go to core. We say, hey, here's the plan we've already created, and we've met with parents. Parents are well aware that the student is struggling.
And a lot of the strategies too, sometimes we, and I know like Erica probably more than myself because I'm newer, but I think like we have a lot of students too who are like, oh, this is like just like Johnny from like 2005. And so we'll kind of like, there's a lot of like similar strategies I think that are like utilized just because a lot of kids kind of have a similar picture. So going kind of into like the behavior plan. Oh no, maybe not.
From Madison.
Yeah.
And just also for these plans, what's helpful is when a student transitions out of elementary school and they decide to level them for all things, parents aren't so caught off guard as to why they're in a particular level. If they have this plan and we've been talking about it, they have a clear picture of what interventions and supports their child had been receiving in elementary school, because sometimes that gets a little lost, a little blurry, and then parents are surprised that they're in level 2 instead of level 1, for example. Okay.
And also, something that they're really big on, our nice specialists, is like, don't come to us like the first time, like Johnny's having an issue and being like, Johnny needs a plan, he's really struggling with, you know, doing his math facts. Like, we have to actually put into place a lot of things, so a lot of the times it's not like the first time that they're coming up. Like, we have to say that we've like already implemented at least 3 different strategies to show that like they're not showing improvement with regular interventions in the classroom. Nope. 1 second. 3rd time's a charm. Yep. There we go.
Sorry about that. So looking at a sample of one of the behavior plans, and I'm in my 3rd year at Lionville, so I will say I'm kind of still like workshopping with some things, so I apologize in advance if this kind of sounds like all over the place because I'm still kind of like working through. But essentially a lot of times the concerns will come to me and we'll put in a plan. A lot of it is like attention and focus based or like specific behaviors. And so a lot of times it's, when it is attention and focus, we kind of start with like an overall, because we do try to make goals that are observable. So a lot of times it's like an on-off task, something that we can go into the classroom and see and collect data on. And so what we were kind of seeing though is like, for example, my student here might have met his on-off task goal, but we're still seeing certain behaviors. Or we still think like maybe a student has ADHD, we know they have ADHD, we have this plan, like all the things, and we still have these behaviors. And it's like, what else do we kind of do to help this student? And so in looking at that, I've been trying to workshop it a little bit and putting my behavior specialist hat on, because our behavior specialist that we have is amazing and I've learned a lot from her. And so I've been trying to kind of narrow down with the teachers, you know, like what specific, like you're saying the student's off task, what specific behaviors are you seeing and what can we, what specifically can we focus on? So we looked at this specific student and his undesired behaviors were vocalizations, calling out, playing with items in his desk, or spinning around on the chair. And so then we kind of go into like FBA land, like functional behavior assessment a little bit, and say, okay, what do we think, what do we think the function of those behaviors are? So in looking at my on-off task data that I collected prior, I have notes to say, you know, I don't think that this student is doing these things for attention. It doesn't seem like he's trying to avoid or escape anything. They really seem more kind of like sensory needs. So we made the goal then of providing the student, like, what are some alternative, more desirable behaviors that we can teach him to then meet those sensory needs, as opposed to like the undesirable behaviors that are then causing more attention and having him be off task. So the ones that we kind of looked at were putting like a rubber kind of band on the bottom of his chair to bounce with his feet. That way, instead of kind of spiraling or moving around on his wobble stool, even if he has that in his regular chair, putting a band on so that he can still get that movement that he needs. using like a wobble cushion so that it kind of gives that same effect of a wobble stool. And then for playing with items in his desk, we're going to try doing some of the kind of like rough and then the soft Velcro strips. And our OT has those that I'll kind of tap on their shoulder that will kind of peel and stick on the inside of his desk so that we can meet that sensory need, but he's not playing with items in his desk and then it's becoming distracting. So I'm kind of trying to reframe it a little bit. It's still a work in progress just because a lot of times students are meeting that on-task goal, and so I'm trying to dive deeper into the data, deeper into the observations, really focus on certain behaviors and those functions and try to figure out how we can, prevent the undesirable behaviors, teach them what is desirable and give them strategies so that, they are able to stay on task and continue learning. And then we keep in...
You're saying desirable today, you usually say expected.
Expected. Yes, expected behaviors. Yes, and then we also throw in just specific strategies, and a lot of these, like Erica mentioned, some are best practice, so just giving him like structured movement breaks. This student at first was asking to use the bathroom a lot, so we implemented giving like a popsicle stick kind of system so that he had a set number of, picking and choosing when is he going to use those, because it was like 20 times going to the bathroom every day. But once we implemented that, we kind of saw that it's working. So now that kind of led us to like, okay, we're not trying to escape anymore, but we're still seeing these behaviors. So like, where can we go from there? And then just asking him, when he is using the bathroom more frequently, like, is it a true emergency or do you maybe just need a break? So helping him to advocate for himself and identify if he needs a break, like that's okay. And just teaching him how to advocate himself and ask for that if he needs it. We did some different things for organizing his materials, and I won't go through everything, but just other strategies that we put in place. And then because there's no academics, we just have in here the monthly guidance lessons. That's what everyone gets under Tier 1. And then Tier 2, he does have some organizational needs. So we have some aides during our MTSS that will go in and check on his materials, make sure that he's all organized. And the same kind of is at the bottom. Same thing with filling out like the extra services, and then we set the date to follow up. And sometimes I don't always have sometimes I don't always have a goal for a student. Sometimes we just use this as a way to document things that we're doing, just so that we can show the parents, like it just helps us keep data. So if I don't have a specific goal, but I'm just focusing more on the behavior, it might look like this as opposed to keeping track of like on-off task data. So it's still kind of a work in progress. I know all of that's kind of like all over the place. But yeah, so sometimes there's not always a goal, but it's just good to keep track of everything, have the data and document it so that we can monitor what we've already done. And all of these are things that we've mentioned in both of our plans that we talked more in depth on. And then this is just going into some of our roles of our specialists and looking at how we meet students through all tiers. And so Tier 1 for myself would look like giving social emotional support and whole group lessons. I participate on the PBIS team and the MTSS teams and core. And then Tier 2 would look like me running small groups that I'm either getting through data from the Tuesday data teams, our core meetings, teacher or parent referrals, or maybe I'm working short term with a student on specific skills, or that could be a student needing like a check-in, check-out or a peer mentor kind of situation. And then Tier 3 would look like if I'm meeting with a student for more long-term, like more than those 6 weeks, and then typically in my role as the school counselor, Tier 3 for me would look like then kind of looking out to referring that student to our prevention specialist, who is more of like a Tier 3 mental health support, the behavior specialist, who's more Tier 3, looking at outside resources and bringing that student to the core team, and then any like crisis intervention.
So as these ladies mentioned, we are really grateful for having a bunch of different supports at our disposal at Lionville Elementary. So one of our supports is also the behavioral specialist. And when we're talking about the tiers that we said we would offer up to you today, but all three of those ladies are super crucial for making sure every one of our tiers works well together. So in Tier 1 for our behavioral specialists, She's part of an MTSS program. We do have her on our PBIS team now, and she's pretty much an amazing consultant for anyone to just pick her brain, like, hey, I've looked in the PRIM manual for one thing, but I really need something else, and she's able to direct them to where they might need to go, things like that. For Tier 2, more through the referral process, she works really closely with Madison and is really trying to make sure that there's a little bit of coaching also that happens, because you can read something on paper, but to implement it with fidelity and be wise about it, you might need someone else to just coach you through that. So it's an amazing opportunity. And then Tier 3, our poor behavioral specialist does a lot of observations. So this year, thankfully, she has someone to help with those observations as well. And they do a lot of the FBAs that are going through the process with our school psychologists. We're able to really help support even the people who don't get the most support, like the psychologists in the building. So we interviewed her for her to be able to speak on.
Of our Tier 3 interventions that we have at Lineville Elementary.
Okay.
Can you explain what your role is at Lineville Elementary?
I am the behavior specialist at Lineville Elementary School.
And what types of interventions do you provide for your students?
My role is twofold. So I provide social skills instruction, which can be anywhere from teaching skills related to social skills or coping skills for students with anxiety needs. I also develop our positive behavior support plans for students to be implemented in the classroom and develop our reinforcement schedules for kiddos that need that.
Awesome. And how do you support the teachers at Lionville?
I support the teachers by helping them to implement the reinforcement schedule that's created for the students. So I'll go in and model, work with the students, collaborate with the teacher as far as having that implemented in the classroom for the student, and then do check-ins so that we know we need to modify the reinforcement schedule for the student.
Perfect. And then without using a student's name, can you just describe how you've helped shape one student's behavior and how he or she maybe has been successful then in the regular ed setting?
Sure. So there's been a few students that I've worked with that I have provided direct instruction for in the area of social skills, and we've worked on developing coping strategies. And then in combination, we've had the reinforcement schedule where the teachers were catching them utilizing those skills in the classroom to have the generalization piece. And we've been able to fade reinforcement for those kids and see them be successful over time.
Awesome. Thanks for all you do at Lineville.
Thank you.
So I think one of the things that I have to give, that was lovely Miss Campbell extra credit for, is that not only is she our behavioral specialist, but she also works with our autistic population and teaches the social skills like she mentioned, which we are pretty much a learning support only building. However, our population of autism and emotional disturbance is increasing tenfold throughout the years, especially post-COVID. And I'm sure you guys are all shaking your heads like us too. So it's really been an interesting shift as her direct instruction has become not just that piece of social skills, but also now the behavioral supports. Yep, we also have our prevention specialist positions. Again, she's on our Tier 1 and our Tier 2. But in Tier 3 is when we really start to get some beneficial things that all teachers can use in their rooms, that she will actually go and help show the class and implement those strategies with. There are a lot of resources in the folder that you guys can scan and see, but there is one particular instance where she uses a very specific strategy with one of our students. And you want to go ahead and click that one. It is completely role play, and it's Miss Gracie's daughter. So.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, that really stinks.
I'm so mad.
Oh. Can we work on using our tip skill that we worked on before? Remember I pulled this out?
I don't wanna.
Okay, all right. Well then, how about a sip of water? Would you be open to a sip of water?
Yes.
Yeah, let's just
Sure.
take a sip of water. How about we also, so do you remember the tip skill that we talked about? It was temperature, so you did that. You took the temperature. You took your temperature down. Would you have another sip of water? Yeah. And then interval exercise. So are we up to moving or, yeah, you want to do 5 jumping jacks with me? Mm-hmm. Okay, let's do 5 jumping jacks. Okay, ready? Go. 1, 2, 3.
So in the interest of time, exercise clearly was the next one. And this is, like we mentioned, in your resources, but it goes from intense exercise, then you go to paced breathing. You know, we're always telling them, take a deep breath in. I know I say it to my own daughter, and she's like, I do not want to take another breath. Walk away from me. So this is kind of like that menu of choices for you to even choose. What do I go to next? And then the final one is just muscle relaxation, really getting to that point where you have taken the student from a high alert down to the possibility of being able to go back into the classroom quickly.
And in interest of time, so we talked about referral process, we talked about what we do for intervention, and now we're going to talk a little bit about what it looks like when it's evaluation time, or if they already identified with an IEP and a positive behavior support plan. Oh, okay. And so, again, depending upon what the circumstance is, we have different members. So for an evaluation, obviously the school psychologist is involved. If related services, OT, PT, speech, and then obviously the regular education teachers, myself, and the parent. And we have an honest conversation. And what's really amazing about when a student is brought up and we are talking about evaluation, parents at Lineville are not surprised, because we've had ongoing conversations all along when we first have concerns. And oftentimes they'll have some of the same concerns, but they know that we're working diligently, we're sharing data continuously, so it's not a super surprise. If they are already identified, obviously the special education teacher is the lead on that. If we need to look at a reevaluation, obviously the school psychologist, or if they were reevaluated because their RR was due, they're there. If they have related services, regular education teachers, I'm the LEA, and the parent is present. And again, having ongoing conversations, sending home the data that's being collected, whether it's on the reinforcement schedule and the behavior books that we have. Parents are usually not surprised if we're calling the IEP meeting to make revisions, because we've been communicating all along, and chances are they may have had to visit me at some point along the way. But obviously the goal is what the goal is at every school, and that is to help kids. And so that's our process for that.
And then we just have one last thing before we move to dessert. And if you flip your resource folder paper over, that is just a basic flow chart of everything that we kind of like captured today. So it starts with the Tuesday data meeting, talks about pre-core, talks about core, talks about what we do with each of the things from pre-core and how we move to eventually the evaluation if needed.
Yes, and then moving on to dessert. Looking at the 3 tiers, obviously with our cooking theme, we have the cake. And so just kind of giving you some examples. So this is one of my friends that I worked with last year. And obviously with parent permission, I've been able to put her in our presentation. And so she was referred to me because she was demonstrating some unexpected behavior in the classroom with peers last year in 1st grade. So she was being not always super kind. Oh, there we go. She was being not always super kind to others. We were targeting specific students, a lot of lying and then stealing items as well. And so kind of just going through, like looking at all 3 tiers and how we support her. We know that she's getting the whole group guidance because the whole school is getting that. Our whole school is getting PBIS. But with this specific student, we started by having her do a check-in, check-out, and I was her mentor. So she would come to me in the morning. We would kind of just check in and chat about her day. And then we kind of took it a step further with the tier 3, and we made her a little individual behavior punch card. And we created that together. So she picked these little, I think they're called like Pusheen cats or something that she liked. So we created it together. So she kind of had that agency and felt like she had ownership of it as well. So she got to design the card with me, and every morning we would come and I have all these colored markers, and she would pick a different color every day. We would pick what number of cats she was going to try to earn, what her reward would be for that day. And then each day at the end of the day, we would come back and say, like, how did the day go? And if she earned a reward, we would make that happen. And if not, we would talk about how, tomorrow's a new day, fresh start. and just kind of thinking about, proof is in the pudding, looking at some success, she then, after a couple of weeks, one of our student of the month themes was leadership one month, and she had got that certificate. So that's me and her with her certificate and her little punch card all punched out, super cute. And so that's one of my examples, and then I'll move over to Jillian, who's going to give an academic example.
So although we know that, the students are going through all of these tiers and it's amazing, and sometimes it just doesn't work. It might be job security for me, but for the whole building, it's reality. For every school, it's reality. You can try as much as you want, but some kids just need a little bit more. So Danny was an academic case for us. He entered with speech needs. And shortly after joining us, they started to realize his reading was a little bit on the slower side, a little bit of, reversals. So through the MTSS process with our K-2 interventionist, she started to do a few small group instructions. The speech teacher also started to do some small group sessions with him. But when it came down to it, we realized he needed a little bit more. So Danny is currently one of our direct instruction reading students, and he gets small group, but Danny had the opportunity to talk about it himself. It's his, yeah. Hi, Danny. Danny, today we're going to talk a little bit about how the PBIS process has helped everyone, but especially you here at Lionville. So Danny, can you tell us a little bit about the whole class and whole building rewards that kids can get?
They can get positive choice cards.
And what do you do with those?
So for 4th and 5th, you can spend them on a cart. It comes around every E-Day. Though for younger kids like 3rd, 2nd, 1st, and kinder, you can put them in a bin in the lobby to earn a prize.
Okay, and when we fill the bin, what does everyone in the whole building get?
We all get a game day or some sort of prize for the whole school.
That's awesome. And Danny, you did something special with your tickets that you won this past couple of weeks. And what did you earn for your class?
I earned a pajama day.
Awesome. So Danny, that's something we do for everyone. And something else we do for everyone in the classrooms is small group with the teacher, or you might read with, different partners. And that's something you do in the rooms. However, when you were a little younger, did we notice you might need just a little extra help?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, and did you start to go and see someone maybe a few days?
Yeah, if I remember right, I went to see Miss O'Keefe a couple days.
And what kind of things did you work with her on?
Spelling, reading. I also used to stay back with my 1st grade teacher, Miss Colley, on Mondays.
Great. And were some things hard for you back then?
Yes, reading, spelling, especially some math.
Okay. So Danny, when we noticed that might not have been enough for you, we had a great meeting with your mom and we talked about putting some things in place to help you out. So in the next step of your journey, we ended up pulling you and giving you additional reading support outside of the room. What does that look like?
It looks really good. It has helped me a lot.
Okay, and what are you learning in that class?
I'm learning reading, spelling. I think the best thing is the reading. It's helping me a lot.
Yeah, and do you feel like you get stuck as much in the class and can't work through problems anymore, or are you starting to get better at things like that?
I'm starting to get better at things like that. I'm starting to be able to read stuff more.
And how does that feel?
It feels good.
So
Do you think people getting little bits of help at the beginning and then starting to get more supports if they need is a good thing for students?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we should keep doing that for a lot of kids? All right, Danny, do you want to show off a little bit? And I'm going to ask you a few letters.
Sure.
All right, go ahead and stand up. Danny, go ahead and tell us what says Great. What says and what says
I almost said his least favorite sound there, so I have to stop myself.
Great. And the final thing I want you to show us, Danny, is what says awesome.
I sent this to his mother for approval, and she goes, "Oh my goodness, you asked him to spell that?"
Danny, that should also say your name, but thank you for putting PBIS because you are awesome. Thank you.
I all like that every time he comes into my room, too. But the one great thing about Danny and the whole process is the main ingredient, I feel like, for every tier, which is communication. Every time I speak to his mother, she knows exactly what I'm going to say because they probably talked about it at the dinner table. But the regular ed teachers, every main ingredient that we've said today is communication is key. Documentation in the original processes is key, but every bit about that is just a great discussion.
And you can't come to our restaurant without paying the bill. But don't worry, it's all priceless. So we just wanted to review that we're not priceless. We actually will take all the tips. But we have 670 engaged learners that help us be as successful as we are, 3 courses of interventions that we put together to make sure the students have success, and an amazing presentation to share with you guys. So thank you so much for coming.